As you've already heard, our guest, he really needs no introduction, but just so you know, of course, you know him as a former senator, U.S. senator. You know him as a presidential candidate. He is the co-founder of Patriot Voices, which is a grassroots online community of Americans from across this country who are committed to promoting faith, family, freedom, and opportunity. He's the author of Blue Collar Conservatives, which was released in April. He's CEO of Echolite Studios, which produces and distributes high-quality movies. He's going to talk about one of those movies that has just come out, but chronicles our fight to protect religious liberty. So I don't usually give long introductions. You all already know him, but I just wanted you to know that he didn't stop when he stopped running for president. He didn't stop fighting for our country. He's still very much on the battlefield. Senator Rick Santorum. Senator, again, thanks for joining us. The floor is yours, and after you've spoken, if you have another 10 minutes or so, we'll give people a chance to ask questions.
I look forward to that. Thank you, Bishop Jackson. I appreciate it. Thank you for your excellent work, your witness, your courage, in standing up for God's truth. And this is one of the keys to why America is the greatest country in the history of the world, because America, unlike every other country, is founded on this principle, which is we are endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights. And no other country was founded on that. No other country is the government's primary purpose to protect rights that are given to citizens by God. And that's why when you look at the Constitution, if you look at the First Amendment, which in the Bill of Rights, you see the first right recognized as the preeminent right is the free exercise of religion. Why? Because our founders understood that without the free exercise of religion, without the ability to worship and to exercise your religion in all aspects of your life, that nothing else really mattered. If you could, freedom of assembly is great, but if you can't assemble for purposes of what you believe in, it's a hollow right. Same thing with freedom of speech. If you can't speak about what your beliefs are, then it's a hollow right. So it is the trunk upon which all other rights flow. And so when we see, as we have, the first time in the history of our country, the government encroaching in a very, very forceful way into people's religious liberty, that is just an area that I just felt I did during the campaign, but when I left the campaign, as Bishop Jackson said, I didn't stop the fight. I got involved with a company called Echolite Studios, which makes feature films. We don't make documentaries, but someone came to us with an idea and actually some footage of a film they were working on, and I said, "Yep, we'll take this on. We'll add to this film." And because we believe this is an important message for Americans. I don't care what religion you are. I don't care if you are a believer. The idea of having freedom of conscience should be a central issue for everybody. And the fact that the government is, for the first time, infringing upon this under this new understanding that our country has, unfortunately, beginning to adopt, which is this idea of separation of church and state. Now, we talk about a lot about that in the movie and explain where it came from and what the doctrine really is about. But separation of church and state is not in the Constitution. In fact, it was never really discussed at all until about 70 years ago. But it has become the law within our court system. And what's happened as a result of that is this idea now that wherever government is, faith cannot be. And so what happened originally was, these are government-run schools. You can't have faith in public schools. Why? Because they're run by the government. And so we see increasingly a reality that Bishop Jackson has talked about a lot, which is government encroaching into everything. And so now, since government is almost everywhere, guess what? Faith can be nowhere. And so what's happened in America is we've seen this encroachment of government forcing religion back into the four walls of the church. And now you hear even the president use not the term freedom of religion or free exercise of religion. He uses the term freedom of worship, which means you're perfectly well and good to do whatever you want to do in your church. But once you walk outside that door of the church, then you belong to the government. You can't practice your faith and exercise it in not just your public life, but I'll give you the Hobby Lobby case, which we talked about. The movie is a story of vignettes, of 7 different stories of how religious liberty is under attack. And they're beautifully told narratives and interviewing people. And one of the people we interview, one of the families we interview, is the Green family who runs Hobby Lobby. And during that case, which is now, everyone says, oh, yeah, but we won. Yes, we won 5-4. And if there's a change on the Supreme Court, then the Solicitor General, who is the chief attorney for the United States, made this argument, and he will prevail if President Obama replaces one of the 5 justices that voted against voted in the right way in Hobby Lobby. What the Solicitor General of the United States said, this is almost a verbatim quote. He said, once you enter into business, you lose your freedom of religion. He said that in the Supreme Court in oral argument. Once you enter into business, you give up your freedom of religion. This is the attitude that is increasingly prevailing in America, and it's one that is antithetical to the experience of what made America the greatest country. Our founders intended and believed, and generations of Americans live by the idea that a vibrant faith in America is what keeps America safe. It's what keeps America prosperous. It's what protects those who are oppressed and in minority positions, because we believe in everybody's ability to come in every aspect of their life and voice their beliefs. That's the idea that was enshrined by the First Amendment and made this country so great. And now we're hearing, no, we are going to shut you up. You only are going to be able to say what the government is going to permit you to say. This is not just an assault on freedom of religion. This is an assault on freedom, period. And that's why this is such an important issue. That's why we produced this movie. We are, just to wrap up, this movie is called One Generation Away. We are encouraging pastors. We are showing this movie exclusively in churches and in schools. We want this to be a clarion call to people of faith to understand this issue, because knowledge is power, and so many people have no idea what's going on out there, how pervasive it is, number one. And number two, they don't know the arguments. When they hear someone say, oh, we're not doing this, we're just trying to do this, you hear both sides. We have Peter Singer and Mary Lynn and people on the left making their arguments in all of these cases. We give them a chance to say their piece, and then we give you the power, which is the response and the truth with respect to what's best for our country when it comes to these issues. So I encourage anybody who's interested, you can go to onegenerationawaymovie.com and bring it to your church and show it there. We look forward to making sure that this movie and this message is heard far and wide. Thank you, Bishop.
Thank you, Senator. Folks, I've heard wonderful things about this film, and I intend to view it. I intend to show it at my church, because one of the things I'm convinced of, Senator, is that Christians do not understand our history, and this whole concept of separation of church and state is something that many have bought into, many pastors have bought into, lock, stock, and barrel, and it has them hamstrung. They feel that they can't speak out on the important issues that our country is facing lest they cross that line and get in trouble with the IRS or violate somehow their responsibilities as a pastor. I had one woman told me, her pastor said, I will not be a lawbreaker. And I'm thinking, wow, how misinformed can you be? So this is one of the ways of getting people informed. Folks, if you want to ask the senator a question, press *6 to get in queue. And while, he's talked about religious liberty and talked about his film, I know there are a lot of things in the news right now. I'm sure many of you, and of course there are certain rumors too about his future plans. So I'm sure there's some of you who have questions about things that he may not have addressed, and I'm sure he'd be happy to answer those to the extent that he can. So, Senator, let me pose the first one. This Congress that has now been elected, can we expect them to stand up for our religious liberty? Can we expect them to actually help the American people to understand and then take action to protect the American people against this encroachment on our liberty? There's still a lot of questions about that, and people wondering what the leadership is going to do and how much they're going to do and so forth. So what's your take on it?
Well, here's an interesting thing. On January 13th, I'm doing a joint event with Tony Perkins at Family Research Council, and we're hoping to get at least 50 churches, one in each state capital around the country, and then hopefully hundreds of other churches beyond that. But we're focusing on with the Family Research Council in getting at least a church in every state capital and inviting the legislatures of all of those states to come to this showing at a church in the Capitol on January 13th. We're going to have a simulcast. Tony and I are going to do a simulcast, and then we're going to do a show the movie and then come on afterwards. And the pitch is going to be, we need in every state in the country to pass a Religious Freedom Restoration Act. We can't count on the Congress to do this, as you know, because of the division in Washington. But as you know, that state capitals are increasingly conservative and very tuned in to making sure that the religious liberty in their states are protected. And so there's draft legislation that's available. Some states have a Religious Freedom Restoration Act, but almost all of them, I think, in fact, all of them need some amendments to strengthen it based on what's happened in the courts recently. And so this is going to be a call on January 13th as the new legislatures are sworn in to get those legislators as well as the churches across America to watch this film, to hear from Tony and to hear from me what we need to be doing in our own states to protect religious liberty in America.
Once again, folks, he's only got a few minutes with us, so if you have a question, please get in queue. Senator, I'm going to ask another one, and that is this. We desperately need a president who is not only committed to stopping what this president is doing, but committed to reversing it, committed to rolling back as much as he possibly can. Any chance that that next president might be you?
Let's just put it this way: I'm doing everything consistent with running in 2016. I mean, we're putting our teams together. We're talking to people. We're trying to raise some money. So the answer is, no decision yet, but we're out there doing what we would be doing and trying to gauge the level of support that's out there. So far, I'm encouraged, but we got a ways to travel yet, and just to encourage you. I mean, everything the president's done. I mean, what he's done with executive orders is outrageous. The most recent one, in my opinion, irrespective of what your position is on what he did, how he did it was wrong, and is a real threat to liberty in America when the president can say, I don't care what the Congress says, I'm gonna just change the law. That's just, presidents can't do that, shouldn't do that, and Americans shouldn't stand for a president that does that, whether they like what he's doing or not. But here's the good news. The good news is every executive order can be repealed. They last only as long as the executive keeps them in place. And so let me assure you that we're going to be very, very aggressive should I occupy 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in repealing both executive orders and regulations that are inconsistent with the laws that Congress passes and the freedoms of our country.
Amen. Martin, let's go to the phones.
Sure. Okay, well, we've got a call coming in from ending in 3389. Caller 3389, go right ahead.
Yeah, hi, this is William in Chesapeake, and just two observations, or a question and observation. One is an observation that if you've ever read the Communist Manifesto, that a number of the things that the far left, a.k.a. the Democrat Party, and the president is pushing for and accomplishing actually accomplishes a number of the tenets of the Communist Manifesto, including the ascendancy or the elevation of pornography and homosexuality, gay marriage, voter fraud, open borders, and mass self-importation of illegal immigrants and things of that nature. So I think that's a huge cause for concern that would raise a number of red flags for any politician, but it doesn't seem like that caution is being thrown to the wind. The other thing is... go ahead.
Go ahead, Senator. Well, I would just say that, the word separation of church and state is not in the U.S. Constitution, but it was in the Constitution of the former Soviet Union. So That's where it's very, very comfortably sat, not in ours.
Okay, thank you, Will. Folks, I just appreciate what this man stands for, and I hope that you all will get in touch with him, follow him, watch what he's doing. Senator, if people want to get in touch with you, they want to find out more about what you're doing, how do they do that?
It's Patriot Voices is the name of my organization. It's patriotvoices.com is the website. You can sign up, and we'll keep you informed on the things that we're working on. Right now we're working and Patriot Voices on a petition called NoObamaAmnesty.com, trying to encourage Congress to stand up and protect our liberties and protect the Constitution. And so you can sign up and send a letter to your congressman and senator through our website, NoObamaAmnesty.com. And if you're interested in the movie project, which I again encourage every pastor, every leader in their community to make sure that churches in your area show it. It's called OneGenerationAwayMovie.com. You go on that website. You can sign up your church, and it's very easy to explain the process about which you show the movie. And if you want to get involved on the January 13th event, just sign up for that church and mention that you want to participate in that, and we'll get you all hooked up.
Now, one quick thing before you go, I'm sure that you feel the same way I felt, that I knew I wasn't going to agree with almost anything President Obama did, but I did hope that having elected the first black president, we would see a sort of a new racial climate in our country, that we would move beyond race, as Dr. King said, be concerned about the content of character, not the color of skin. That doesn't seem to have happened, unfortunately. In fact, in my view, things seem to have gotten worse. What are your comments about what you hear going on in Ferguson and the president and the attorney general's response to it?
Well, when you cavort with Al Sharpton, you certainly aren't into racial reconciliation, and that sort of sums it up right there. And you surround yourself with folks who are not healers but dividers. This president has been the divider-in-chief on so many fronts. You had hoped, as you mentioned, Bishop, you'd hoped that on this front, it was an opportunity for the president to do something, transformational, that he could have been that figure that could have made a real difference in racial reconciliation, could have made a real difference just within the black community, and he chose to take a different path. He chose to use it as a wedge issue, as opposed to an issue that was one that he said he wanted to accomplish when he was going to heal the country. He has done anything but.
Well, Senator, thank you so much for all that you're doing. We will go to your website. I'll encourage people to make sure that they get and watch and show the film. Certainly with my network of pastors, I'm going to get this out there. If there's anything else that we can ever do, please don't hesitate to call on us. I'm a senior fellow, by the way, for FRC, so I'll be in some way helping to support the January 13th event. So God bless you.
Perfect.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much, Bishop. God bless you and everybody on this call. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye now. Okay, folks, Senator Rick Santorum, I see people signing up for or getting in queue for questions. It's a little too late now, folks. I would encourage you, we have a guest of his prominence, have a question ready and let's make the most of his presence, because I don't want to hold him and monopolize him myself. Look, three things that I wanted to bring up with you. If you have any questions or comments, maybe we'll have a chance to give those of you who haven't done that yet an opportunity to do so. One is, and you may not be aware of this because the mainstream media is really not reporting it, but there is a guy named Terry Bean. Terry Bean is a member of the Human Rights Campaign Board, which is Human Rights is a homosexual organization, as I'm sure most of you know. But he's a member of the board and one of Obama's biggest donors. Well, he has just had to take a leave of absence from the HRC board because he has been charged with sexual assault. Apparently, he and his former boyfriend, Well, it even pains me to even say such things. But he and his former boyfriend, Kaya Lawson, are accused of having sex in a hotel with a 15-year-old boy that they recruited online through some sort of app. And so he is under threat of criminal prosecution. One of Obama's biggest donors, somebody's worked closely with him. In fact, he's one of the one of the major founders, I should say, of the Human Rights Campaign and of the Gay and Lesbian Victory Fund. And here again, a big contributor to the presidential campaign of Barack Obama and probably to who knows what else as well. There's a virtual blackout in the news. That's why I say you probably haven't heard this because, frankly, they don't want to talk about it. And folks, this is where I tend to get myself in trouble with the mainstream media, but, I take that as a badge of honor. If Obama can take being lawless as a badge of honor, I can take being criticized for pointing these things out as a badge of honor. There's something fundamentally wrong when people decide that they're going to follow a lifestyle that the Bible condemns and that they're going to be proud of it and they're going to pursue it. And I'm not saying that heterosexuals can't commit these sorts of crimes. Of course they can. Of course they can. But it just strikes me that, and this is just my biblical worldview on this, that a man and a woman together help each other in this sense. Women help to domesticate men, to settle men, to stabilize men. Look, this is nothing anybody's not aware of. It's just the way it is. And when you have two men, or for that matter, two women, the balance that each of them is supposed to bring to the relationship is simply not there. And I think it promotes this kind of behavior, frankly. But at any rate, you should be aware that this is going on. Because like I said, you won't hear about it on the news. You certainly they won't allow it to come anywhere near Obama. Although this is apparently one of the people he has worked closely with, but it won't touch him with a 10-foot pole. So be aware of that. And the second thing I was going to mention is obviously this president's lawless act and this executive so-called order that he has issued, which really fundamentally changes our immigration laws. I just want to say two quick things about that. Number one, we've got to make sure that we communicate our message in a way that makes our Hispanic citizens aware that we are not against them, that we don't hate them, that we don't regret their being in our country. They're citizens, just like you and I are citizens, and we're glad about that. What we are talking about is the rule of law, and it would not matter whether they were black or white. It just wouldn't matter. It just does not matter. What matters is that our borders must be secure, and we cannot allow people to come willy-nilly into our country and then continue to reward people for that, because all it's going to produce is another wave of people coming into our country. We can't absorb them all. We can't socialize them all. We can't even monitor them all. We can't know who's coming and who's not. And we've been sold a bill of goods that our borders were secure. Our borders were not and are not secure. And all of this stuff about now putting resources into making the border secure is a scam. It's a scam. And because we've been played along with this for the last 6 years, really. And all the stuff about deportations is a scam because they're counting every turn back from the border as a deportation. That's not a deportation when you stop people from coming into the country. But this is what they do. They've deceived us, and now we're about to pay a very, very heavy price because he is just going to, by executive fiat, open the floodgates not only for the 5 million that he is giving amnesty to here, and that's what it is. You could call it a temporary amnesty, but I think, there's certain things, once the toothpaste comes out of the tube, you can't put it back in. It's very, very difficult to undo it. But also, who knows how many over the next several years will come in as a result of having sent one more signal. It doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter what the law says. It doesn't matter what politicians say. It doesn't matter who likes it, who doesn't. In the end, if you can get across the border illegally, you will eventually be made legal. There is no disincentive not to do it at all, because if you can get across eventually, it may take a while, but eventually you will be made legal. You will be given rights and privileges that people who are waiting to try to get into the country legally will not get, because you took it upon yourself to violate our laws. So, folks, that's what we're facing, and it is my hope that this Congress, and I sent you a letter a while ago, but I'm going to send out another one, but this Congress will hold this president's feet to the fire, that they will stop all nominations, as they've said they would do, except for national security nominations. They would stop all nominations. Senator Cruz is calling for this. No judicial appointments, no appointments to his cabinet, no appointments to his government, that they would stop that, stop it cold, and that they would defund everything they're capable of defunding. Everything they're capable of defunding. People shut down the government. Obama's the one who's shutting down the government, but we'll leave that aside for the moment. Don't give him money to spend where he's spending money to do things that violate the Constitution and abuse his presidential authority. Period. Just stop it. Just stop him. Now that may not be able, may not be able to stop what he's doing with immigration, but he's got to be made to pay a price. And here's the third thing, and to me this is the most important thing. We've got to communicate to the American people why these things must be done, why this president must be brought to heel. We've got to explain to them that the checks and balances on the government was not simply to restrain the government. It was to protect the freedom of the American people. That's the ultimate goal, our freedom. And when this president tramples on that, he is ultimately trampling on our freedom. So it's got to stop. It's got to end. So, folks, that's the second thing. Here's the last thing. So we may be done early with this call, except for any questions or comments you may have. This situation in Ferguson is, of course, completely out of control, and we've seen some violence in Chicago and Oakland and L.A. We've seen protests in D.C., but thank God, no violence. But, folks, we need to pray for our country, because I think Senator Santorum put it so well. When you got a president who uses as an advisor Al Sharpton, case closed. To me, that tells you everything you need to know. Everything you need to know. And there's something so skewed about his judgment that it's just, or so radical in his ideology that it's just beyond comprehension that we've got someone like that actually sitting in the White House occupying the office of the presidency. But that's what we've got. So we got to pray for our country. We got to continue to believe in reconciliation and healing in our country in spite of this. We got to continue to believe in the rule of law and in the system of justice that we have. It is not perfect, but it works. It works. It has served us for the last 200 and some odd years, depending on which year you pick, the Declaration or prior or the passage of the Constitution. But it has served us for over 2 centuries. And look, folks, we found out 2 things as a result of the report that was given last night when no bill was handed down against Officer Darren Wilson. We found out, number one, and I don't know how people can ignore this, that police officer was sitting in his vehicle and that young man, 6'5", 300 pounds, reached into that car and tried to wrestle that gun away from that officer. Now, folks, that happened. That's a fact. And the gun went off in the vehicle and stippling ended up on the thumb of Michael Brown, and it's clear what was going on. He was trying to take that gun away from that officer. If he had gotten that gun, what do you think would have happened? Folks, I hate to say it, but I think he would have killed him. I mean, he wasn't reaching for that gun for nothing. I think he would have killed him. And at that point, Michael Brown went from being an unarmed young man to being a very dangerous criminal. How many people do you know who would try to reach into a police officer's car and wrestle the gun away from a police officer? How many people do you know? How many criminals even would try that? Very, very few. But that's what he did. And at that point, the whole dynamic was changed. Here's the second thing we know, that this young man was gunned down at about 35 feet from this officer. You try it yourself. You measured a distance of 35 feet, and then you run that distance. I mean, just trot it. A slow trot, modest trot. You know how long it takes to cover that distance? 6 seconds. 6 seconds. Imagine if a person is running, and there are some witnesses that say he was running toward the officer in a full-out run with his head down, which is why he got shot in the top of the head. But what we do know is, however fast he was moving toward that officer. It was a matter of seconds before he got to him. Now, could it have been handled another way? Folks, I don't know, but I do know this. If I'm in a situation where a 6'5" man who's just tried to take my gun away and maybe kill me with it is coming toward me, and I know that I do not have the strength to overpower him, I don't have any choice, in my view, to save my own life, but to stop him. And apparently he shot at him, hit him 2 or 3 times, but none of the wounds were fatal. Michael Brown stopped, and then he moved toward him again. And when he moved toward him again, that's when the fatal shots were fired. Now, look, folks, those are just facts. They're tragic facts. They're sad, because a young man is dead who might have been able to reform his life and make something of himself. A police officer is going to have to live with the rest of his life, with the reality that he killed a young man who, I mean, he did what he thought he had to do, but I'm sure that that's not something that's easy to live with, even though you feel justified in doing it. So it's just tragic all around. What we don't need are these race hustlers running around talking about black life is of no value and it's okay to kill a black man when 93% of the black men who are killed in America are killed by other black men. And we, it's hunting season on black men for white cops. I mean, it's preposterous. It's preposterous, folks. And it's sad, because what our young people need is education. They need stable families. They need jobs. They need opportunity. They need vision. They need someone to instill in them a sense of hope and possibility for their future. And instead, we've got these race hustlers, these race-obsessed people running around telling them that it's open season on them. Well, no wonder you had gunshots fired last night. No wonder you had 12 buildings burned down. And no wonder we're likely to see the same thing happen again tonight, and for who knows how long before this thing finally winds its way down. It's sad. It's tragic. Pray for our country, because we are in trouble, not just because of an incident like this, but because we don't have the leadership in the White House or the Attorney General's office, and really we don't have prominent leadership anywhere that the media will amplify, that can help bring a sense of peace and reconciliation and reason and decorum to this situation, to help people come to grips with this very tragic situation, but look at the facts and deal with them for what they are. Look, the reality is these young black boys are going to have to be taught to respect authority. They're going to have to be taught that you don't fight police officers, that you don't beat up your teacher, that you don't curse out your parents. Basic things. When I was growing up, what we were taught? For all adults, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, no, sir, no, ma'am. And now it's yeah, nah. And they basically will talk to adults in many instances like they found them. This is endemic now. It's a cultural degeneration that can only be addressed from within the community itself. And see, nobody wants to talk about that, because that's as I had one one so-called civil rights leader say to me one time. He said, "When you say that, you're letting the white man off the hook." I mean, how ridiculous can you get? Do you want to solve the problem, or you just want to be in a position of political manipulation over people? Let's solve the problem. Let's address the issue and stop with this nonsense that we've got to have people under our thumb. We got to have people on the defensive. We got to have people feeling guilty. We got to make sure that the white man is put in his place. I mean, what? Folks, it's sad. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's what I'm fighting for. That's what you're fighting for. It's not what Al Sharpton's fighting for. It's not what this president's fighting for. It's not what this attorney general's fighting for. I mean, this attorney general didn't want to prosecute the new Black Panther Party. They let go every terrorist they can, as soon as they can, as quickly as they can, and they go back and kill more Americans. They wouldn't fight for the release of Tamarisi, and they seem to have no sympathy for this officer and the fact that he could have been killed in that fracas in the vehicle. How about that? I mean, the fact that he could have been killed, just the fact that the gun went off. He could have been shot when the gun went off. There's no concern for him, for his family. And look, I'm not saying I'm not concerned for Michael Brown's family. I am. I'm deeply concerned because, look, I've got children. And any time people lose a child, that's got to be a horrific thing. I don't care how it happens. Horrific. But we can't make that the standard for how we deal with these issues. The standard has got to be truth and righteousness and decency and honor and lawfulness. So folks, listen, with all this stuff going on around us, make sure, keep your eyes on the prize. Keep your eyes on the prize. And the prize that we're keeping our eyes on is just what that vision is. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're not giving up on that. We're a constitutional republic. We're people of freedom, free markets, free opportunities. We're people who care about one another. That's the kind of nation that we are, and that's what we're going to keep building in spite of this little blip we've had with this particular administration and the Al Sharptons of the world and Jesse Jackson of the world and some of these people who seem to live to keep us divided and keep anger and hatred going. My goodness gracious, that's not going to help a single black child. It's not going to help our country. So folks, stay in the fight. We cannot be defeated if we will not quit. Okay? Martin, do we know who we've got next week?
Yes, we've got Kelly Shackelford. Okay,
Kelly Shackelford. He's going to be talking about religious liberty and talking about one of those cases in which a man was denied a job, happened to be a black man down in Georgia, was denied a job because they found out he had gone to a church completely unrelated to his job, completely unrelated to why they were hiring.
It sounds like we may have lost Bishop, but as Bishop said, we cannot be defeated if we do not quit.